Hello, listeners. My name is Eric, and this is Delve, the official management thought leadership podcast of McGill University. So I'm Delve's managing editor, and today I have an exciting conversation in store for you. So we're going to be talking to Renee Sieber, an associate professor at the Department of Geography here at McGill University, and she was recently named one of the top 100 brilliant women in AI ethics. So with businesses everywhere looking to AI to enhance their work, it's no surprise that the public sector is considering it too. But is this a good idea? So for Renee, it's not so clear. AI has a lot of potential for public good by improving public transport systems or balancing electrical grids, but she's concerned that if we're not careful, we might lose humanity in our government services. So she and I cover a ton of ground in this conversation, and I felt like we could have covered so much more, so I really hope that you get a lot out of it. So all right, let's delve into it. Professor Renee Sieber, Associate Professor of Geography and Environment, Top 100 Brilliant Women in AI Ethics for 2025. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you here.
I'm really excited. Let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, okay, so much to talk about. The audience won't hear it, but just before we started recording, I think we just automatically just launched into just like all these interesting threads. And I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to launch into this. And I think part of the reason we wanted to invite you on the show was just because we're at a management school. We think a lot about AI in terms of business and as a tool for the private sector. And I think a lot of your work kind of looks at it on the other side, looking at it as a tool for the public sector. So maybe I think a good place to start would be, I'd just be curious to get your thoughts as to where you see the differences are when we're thinking about something like generative AI and how it should be used in different places, in public institutions versus private, what kind of considerations are different there. And then maybe we could start there and then and see where that takes us.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Second of all, the summit. So I'm really interested in the question of public engagement or civil society engagement in AI. So there actually are overlaps with people who do UI, UX, user interface design, user experience design. And you'll see that in concepts like participatory design. So you build a product and you want that product to reach the appropriate customer base. So you engage them early on. That approach is equally used in business as well as in the public sector. So there are overlaps, and obviously, and hopefully I'll get to this more, there is a concern in both sectors about efficiency. Efficiency to me is a troublesome word. So one of the big differences between a public sector and a private sector, especially in Canada, is we are, I don't want to make this sound bad, we're an inefficient country by geography. We are an enormous country. And if everyone was compacted at the US-Canada border, we would be a lot more efficient in terms of service delivery. But we cannot be, and we do not wish to be, because we do not want to displace millions of people from where they live in rural and remote communities. Therefore, we need to focus on effectiveness rather than efficiency, even as the AI, the algorithms want to optimize and want efficiency. Mm-hmm. So that's one big difference, is a need to focus on effectiveness as opposed to efficiency, not that we necessarily get rid of efficiency in the public sector. Also, public sector is in the business of service delivery and being fair in its service delivery. So you can't always eliminate, be very efficient if you took humans out of the loop entirely. But you can't really take humans out of the loop, or you should not take humans out of the loop in the public sector. You want humans involved, and you want to, I would argue, retain the humanness of government. And I think a last big difference is we tend to forget sometimes in our drive towards optimization that governments often are a work program. So sometimes you want to keep humans involved. Sometimes you want to keep humans in call centers and not chatbots in call centers answering your questions about taxes or service delivery, because in rural and remote areas, government is the only employer. So sometimes you want to have that redundancy, those inefficiencies, because you want to have that human touch and you want to employ people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think about something like healthcare. Like I just wrapped up an interview with a team. They have a startup where they're using generative AI to create synthetic images, like medical imaging, to round out data sets and try to move some science forward in that way. And there's a security there and there's a value there in healthcare anyway that I think comes naturally to people who work in that space. But I wonder about other government services. So I'm curious, where do you see Gen AI being? Where do you think people would want to use it? And then what are the risks and maybe opportunities there? Like what are some considerations that they should be thinking about?
Well, I won't let you get away with a healthcare startup without mentioning one possible problem
Sure.
with a startup like that.
Yeah.
And it is that they're building synthetic images atop data that they already had.
Yes.
I am reminded of a conversation I had with someone in the U.S. Veterans Administration and how they were extolling the virtues of AI and kind of a whole life cycle from diagnosis through treatment through follow-up. And I asked them whether or not they were worried at all about the racial discrimination baked into the data that they had, and they were going to use that going forward to do predictions for treatment options for new patients. Like, how did you handle the fact that it was thought that Black people had thicker skin than white people, or that you had to use more force on them to, with needles, or that they could withstand pain more.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to prescribe pain medication to them.
Right.
It's like it unfortunately did not occur to the person I was talking to that there could be bias in past data that they needed to scrub or be constantly mindful of its intrusion or its injection into future treatment options. So that's something that one should consider. But to your question about where it could be used, any number of places. It could be used, for example, in machine translation. So it could be used, you have a call center. I'm thinking about the city of Laval. They have a community of multiple languages. So you could, this is for their non-emergency lines. Maybe you have someone who only knows one or maybe 1.5 languages, but they have a machine language tool beside them, and it could do translation on the fly.
Right.
So that's one option. Another application could be for transportation. There's any number of predictions or optimizations you can do. Hey, I just got out of the metro here, and optimizing intermodal transportation could be very useful. So you actually are monitoring how many people are exiting the metro. You're harmonizing the interconnections among metro lines to to other forms of transit, or maybe we need Bixie bikes that are close to the metro station. So, I mean, we already have that, but maybe it could be tweaked a little bit more.
Mhm.
So those are a couple of ways that it could be used. What I don't want to see it used for are chatbots. We already know how decision trees in phones are super irritating. It's like, no, press 1 for no, I was already at this menu, right? Imposing a chatbot on that is just so infuriating. Plus, one big difference and coming back to the question of the difference between the public and the private sector is the issue of liability. And you have to be much more concerned about liability, because your algorithm that determines who gets child protective services, if it gets it wrong, it is possible that a child might die. And I mean, certainly we can see this in the private sector as well, but there are far fewer things that might cause death and injury, arguably, in the private sector than in the public sector. So you have to be far more accountable in the public sector than in the private sector.
Yeah, I mean, so when you were talking about infrastructure management, it made me think of because you'd mentioned that you're a sci-fi fan. It reminded me of the book "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress" by Robert Heinlein, and it's essentially a robot, like an AI on the moon that basically assists in a revolution. And the person who had the power in that story was the scientist, the guy maintaining the machine. And yeah, like it's interesting because like if Gen AI becomes a ubiquitous tool through our public institutions, and not everyone understands how it works, but they use it every day. But then you just have a handful of people who actually are able to pop open the hood and like actually look at how it's working and adjust the way it works. Um, I don't know. That feels to me like interesting power dynamic there too, because you're giving the tool a ton of influence over public life in that case, and you're giving a few people a ton of capability to influence that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious what your take would be on that.
I remember, decades ago, I was reading this article about how technologies or innovations become the most dangerous when they fade into the background, because we cease to question what they're there for, who's who's the person behind the curtain, as the Wizard of Oz. And we don't question a lot of the assumptions. That's probably why it's so much fun to be an interdisciplinary scientist or be an academic, because we're constantly questioning the assumptions built into things, whether that's our disciplines or whether that's the tools we use or the subjects we study. So I think we're seeing a lot of that now. There are huge challenges in certain federal agencies. I don't know if I want to name them, but who have handed, this isn't generative AI necessarily, these are deep learning models, have handed over adjudication or determination to AI systems. And then we see bad things happen as a result. It is all too easy to remove the human from the loop. And, I'm quite skeptical of the concept of human in the loop anyway, because I deal with public engagement, often a human in the loop is really it's like, oh, we had humans in the loop. Yeah, because they were training the data sets to be input into your system, right? That's not the kind of inclusion that I was looking for. So there can be huge problems with considering, what constitutes oversight. But that being said, I think we're already seeing instances where humans have been completely cut out because public sector private sector, right? It's too costly to have, it's reduction of labor costs. That's also something that really bothers me is that so often AI is not sold for insights, it's sold for firing people.
Yeah. Should governments be like playing with this stuff then?
Well, AI is a big basket. And there's lots of stuff in AI. AI ranges from logistic regression to deep learning to generative AI, also includes predictive analytics. So it's like
Hmm.
partly statistics, partly chatbots. I mean, it's all over the place. So AI is a concept that's been around since the late 60s. Um, and it's become a useful tool. We should always remain skeptical of it. We should not use it blindly. We should understand the impacts, the biases. So I don't have a good answer to that. It's like, oh, it's useful. Why is it? Why is it useful? It's because your friend in the cubicle over got fired because your employer thought that you could do both jobs. So you're having to use it. You're having to learn it because the your wage has been depressed. Say if you're in the global south and you're now a gig worker, right? So you can't. We talk a lot about large language models, but there's also image to text and text to image models, and so you have to learn it to compete because you're not getting the money that you used to get for generating a logo, for example, or for training data. So it's important to question why AI is being used in the first place, what the problem is. I mean, we're in another era of a hammer in search of a nail, that AI will fix everything rather than it's like, what are we trying to fix in the first place?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And then if let's say if we automate as much as possible and we have 10 guys running the entire government, it's like I don't know, this feels to me like an area where UBI becomes more helpful because then labor becomes this whole other thing where it's no longer we don't need as many people doing as many things. So then is this a pathway to the leisure society that we were promised in the 50s, or like, like I don't.
Where's my jetpack?
Yeah, where's my jetpack? Exactly.
It's just bringing up so many thoughts. Um, we Sometimes I'm happy that I live in a risk averse country and I live in a slower country than the US because, yeah, we all move fast and break things, but at least we have an equitable, hopefully equitable infrastructure, social infrastructure that people can fall back on, whereas in other parts of the world, they don't. So, even though Canada punches above its weight in terms of AI with two of the godfathers of deep learning and initiatives like the Directive on Automated Decision Making that came out of the Treasury Board and the Treasury Board's Algorithmic Impact Assessment, these are gold standards that are used around the world. Um, we're also, cities especially move quite slowly. And obviously, there's a lot of complaints about us treating algorithms and AI knowledge as like lumber. So we just cut it down and we ship it all to other places in the world. And they're the ones who are making the multiplier effects out of it. Uh, but slowness is sometimes not a bad thing, where we hope that the social infrastructure can catch up and be able to afford people who fall between the cracks as we create that supposed leisure society.
Yeah. I'm thinking of just a conversation I had with my editor in chief the other day, like just preparing for this interview and thinking about some of these questions. And he had the question of like just thinking about AI as a public right. And I think about how internet has become this critical piece of infrastructure, the same way electricity has, and how there's pushes to try to make sure that everyone has access to a respectable, like a respectably fast enough internet. Is AI going down that way? Like, is there a version of this where AI becomes such like a ubiquitous piece of infrastructure that now it's like an essential tool for every type of person living in a society?
Well, I'd actually put a lot of other things as a right, an
Yeah,
intrinsic
well,
right above AI.
100%, 100%. It's yeah, like clean water for many of the communities here in
And
Canada, for
housing and
example, and housing.
food.
I 100% with you.
The the immediate comment I would have would be access gets aligned with concepts like transparency. Absent a legal regime of hard law and accountability, these things are meaningless.
Right.
So, what happens if you have access and you cannot improve your life substantially as a result of that access?
Hmm.
And I know that, you know, you remember how we went through this brief era of girls can code and everybody should learn coding now. Coal miners should learn coding in an environment of low code and no code platforms where you basically write a prompt and it generates the programming code for you. What did it mean? What does it mean that you had access to this
Hmm.
platform? So now you can code, but there are no jobs for coders,
Hmm.
right? So what does it mean if you have access and it doesn't give you money? It doesn't get you more clean water.
Yeah.
So what does it mean if government or the private sector are more transparent about the impacts and the data sources if you can't do anything with that transparency?
Hmm.
One of the things that emerged as a concept in government is the idea of creating algorithmic registries. So a government would have to list all of the algorithms that they were using. Well, I mean, a couple of problems was one was, man, the stuff that you're listing don't seem to be terribly impactful. It's like you're not uncovering, you don't have algorithms that reveal corruption in
Hmm.
government. Instead, it's like where the park should be located. So that's one problem is what gets released, what becomes transparent, even though we're supposed to be living in an environment, created by Justin Trudeau of transparency and openness by design. So what does that get you? And second of all, transparency for what, right? So you have this, I'm just reminded of all the exhortations for police body cameras. And I don't know if, we don't have time to go into the actual problems with body cameras where police can selectively turn them off or
Yeah.
turn them on when, it's most advantageous for them. So without an accountability regime that has actual repercussions if you do bad things, what does transparency, what does access get you?
Well, Professor Renee Sieber, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like that we could go on for so much longer, and maybe we'll have to do a longer version of this one day.
Yeah,
But
you didn't even ask the question about is AI compatible with democracy.
oh
We
my
could do
goodness, oh.
hours on that.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's keep that one in our back pocket. Thank you so much for joining. This was
Thanks for having me.
so much fun. Thank you. All right, and that was today's episode of the Delve podcast. So that was Renee Sieber, an associate professor here at McGill University and one of 2025's top 100 brilliant women in AI ethics. If you have feedback about the show or if you want us to cover a particular topic, send us an email. You can reach us at delve@mcgill.ca. That's DELVE@mcgill.ca. And I'm also happy to share some exciting news. We have a LinkedIn newsletter, and we're going to be publishing weekly. So be sure to give us a follow on our LinkedIn page at McGill Delve. So that's McGill, DELVE, to get our thought leadership content directly in your LinkedIn app. So thank you so much for listening, and we're going to catch you next time. Take care.